Number 10 leads us to the country of Sudan. Sudan has become one of the most dangerous countries in the world due to various factors. The country has been severely impacted by years of conflict and violence, with the situation deteriorating further as the days go by. Since the year 1983, Sudan has been embroiled in a civil war that has resulted in the loss of life of nearly 2 million individuals. Additionally, the alleged mass annihilation by the Sudanese government in the Darfur area has displaced millions of other people. Sudan faces the threat of extremist groups who have been responsible for multiple unfortunate acts within the country. Number 9 takes us to the Central African Republic. The ongoing violence and humanitarian crisis have made the Central African Republic one of the most unsafe nations in the entire world. The country has been plagued by instability as well as violence for numerous years, and there really is no sign that this is going to improve anytime soon. More than half of the population relies on humanitarian aid, and millions of people have been forced to flee their homes due to all the fighting that's going on. Also, the violence has resulted in thousands of people losing their lives and countless injuries, and many civilians have been subjected to all manner of unspeakable acts. Due to the lack of security, people are unable to carry out their daily activities without fear for their safety, and many have sought asylum in other countries because of all of this. And at the number 8 spot, we have Somalia. The State Department of the United States warns against traveling to Somalia due to armed conflict, the persistent and high threat of attacks, and the prevalence of violence. Attacks are frequent in Somalia, and various targets including Aden Adi International Airport, government officials and buildings, hotels and restaurants, foreigners, foreign interests, and the UN personnel are all at risk. Recent incidents had resulted in numerous fatalities and injuries, and the probability of kidnapping is very high in Somalia. It is recommended to maintain unpredictability in your movements there, and things like grenade attacks have taken place in residential areas and markets in south central Somalia, so it's advisable to avoid violent areas as well as large public gatherings in Somalia. Country coming in at the number 7 spot is Iraq. Iraq is ranked 157th on the Global Peace Index, and it's primarily due to the continuous unrest and violence in the region. The aftermath of the Iraq War and several ongoing conflicts have led to the displacement of millions of individuals, causing significant human suffering and thousands of individuals losing their life. The instability of the country is further compounded by the government's widespread corruption, which is considered to be among the worst in the world. Congo comes up next at number 6. The Democratic Republic of Congo has been grappling with violence and unrest for several years. The country is home to multiple armed factions, and the government is notably unstable. Also, there's poverty and inequality. Those are prevalent, providing ample opportunities for criminal organizations and gangs to enlist new members because of this. Living in the Democratic Republic of Congo poses significant risks and is expected to remain one of the most unsafe nations globally for an extended period. Coming in at the number 5 spot, we have South Sudan. As of 2022, South Sudan is considered the most dangerous nation in Africa. Following its secession from Sudan in 2011, the country has been grappling with political instability as well as civil war, and the conflict has resulted in the displacement of over 2 million people, with more than 400,000 fatalities being reported. The presence of several armed factions throughout the country makes life in South Sudan extremely difficult for many individuals. The country's infrastructure is in dire condition, with limited access to essential services such as healthcare and education. Russia is up next at number 4. Russia is ranked number 4 primarily due to its high homicide rate and escalating political turmoil, especially with everything going on with the war on Ukraine. In comparison to other nations, Russia's homicide rate stands at 9.5 per 100,000 inhabitants. And this can be attributed to the country's high poverty and inequality levels, as well as the absence of the rule of law and widespread corruption in the country. The increasing frequency of rallies and opposition activities in Russia has led to growing political unrest, and this is predicted to result in future civil upheaval and heightened violence. Coming down to the number 3 spot, let's take a look at the country of Syria. Since the year 2011, Syria has been engulfed in a civil war that has caused over 250,000 losses of life and resulted in more than 7.6 million internally displaced people. The nation's infrastructure is in ruins and the health and education systems have been decimated. Additionally, criminal groups have committed unspeakable acts against civilians, further adding to the ongoing conflict there. And due to its proximity to Europe, Syria's refugee crisis has reached an unprecedented level. This is why Syria is currently ranked the 3rd most dangerous country on the globe. This is why Syria is currently ranked the 3rd most dangerous country on the planet. From there, let's go over into Yemen at number 2. The situation in Yemen shows no sign of improvement. A civil war that erupted back in 2015 has led to tens of thousands of fatalities and has displaced millions of people from their homes. As a result of the prolonged conflict, famine is widespread in the country and basic amenities like healthcare and education are in very short supply. The presence of organizations such as Al-Qaeda as well as other groups has also made the country more dangerous for citizens and for anyone that travels within their borders. Ending this episode off at number 1, we have Afghanistan. Decades of war have severely hindered Afghanistan's human development, resulting in one of the world's lowest human development indices. The continuing conflict in the country has caused high levels of violence and insecurity, disproportionately affecting civilians there. On top of that, we got to talk about the corruption within the Afghan government, which has impeded the provision of essential services and the improvement of the country's infrastructure on a whole. And because of all these factors, this is why Afghanistan is the number 1 dangerous country in the planet.
All right, number 10 on our list today probably doesn't come as a surprise to you, as North Korea is quite notorious for their reputation around the globe, especially when it comes to tourists visiting their country. I guess it's fair to say that whatever happens in North Korea stays in North Korea. Most of the public in the country have no idea what the outside world has to offer, and truthfully, none of us really know what happens behind their borders unless we've been there. You might be surprised to find out that the only way to access North Korea is through a paid guided tour from China. And while you're on these tours, don't even think about taking photos, interacting with locals, or speaking ill of their leader. And definitely do not try entering North Korea unless you are booked with a tour. To give you an idea of what the tour alone might cost, most guided tours range from $500 to $2,500 US. And I'm sure that does not include the cost of your airline ticket and accommodation. So your desire to go there should be pretty intense if you're going to go through all of that work. Next on our list, we have Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia's visa laws are a bit shocking, and this is because when you hear the stipulations on entering the country, you may feel as though they are stuck in the past. Despite the country being quite rich, full of modern cities and grand shopping experiences, not just anyone can enter. Women traveling solo must have a sponsor upon entering the country, and this person needs to be responsible for that female for the entire duration of her trip. Couples who enter Saudi Arabia are expected to be married and provide proof of marriage via a legally certified marriage certificate. Without either of these, your visa would likely be denied. Oh, and we should also mention that if you have an Israel travel stamp anywhere on your passport, you could also have further trouble obtaining a visa. Now, if you don't fall into any of these categories that we mentioned just now, your visa process should hopefully process smoothly. Visas for Saudi Arabia are typically around $123 US. Fancy a visit to Turkmenistan? As you can see, having an invitation letter from a citizen or travel agency of the country you intend to visit is quite a common thing for many of the countries on today's list. But Turkmenistan requires you to have an invitation letter even just to apply for a visa, and this does not secure the process as you could still be denied. Other than the required letter, Turkmenistan isn't overly difficult for travelers. Now, you'll just have to make sure to fill out an immigration card upon arrival and register with the state service within 3 days of arriving in the country. The cost of the Turkmenistan visa ranges between $35 to $50 USD. Not too bad. Next up, we have China. Now, China's visa process isn't as intense as North Korea, but still has its own unique challenges. Most passport holders can travel to China for a period of up to 72 hours without obtaining a visa. For example, if you're just doing a layover or popping in for a day or two, there's no problem there. Just keep in mind they may ask you many questions to make sure you're telling the truth about where you're staying, but most of the time you'll be cleared. Now, if you plan to stay for longer, you'll need to book an appointment in your home country with an accredited travel agency that processes Chinese visas. You will need to prove where you're staying, what day you're flying in, and how long you will be in the country. If you plan to be in China for over 30 days, they'll also want to see a daily itinerary. Prices for the Chinese visa can vary. If you're coming from Canada, it will run you about $162, and coming from the States, it'll be closer to $242. Now, I actually experienced this application process myself as I visited some friends in China a few years ago. It is quite a lengthy process, so start early. Now, this next country is definitely on my list. Angola may or may not be on your list to travel to, mostly because the country is still recovering from years of civil war. Surprisingly, the capital city, Luanda, has been rated as one of the most expensive cities in the world to visit, and the visa process is not even close to being a smooth one. You'll need an invitation letter, proof of all your hotels, and you'll want to give yourself months to obtain the visa, as many things could go wrong in the process. Also, be mindful to stash away some cash, as visas run for about $120 US, and that's only citizens from 59 countries that can actually obtain the visa. But the visas also come with processing fees and other possible fees upon arrival. Now, it sounds like quite the challenge, but if your heart is set on Angola, then go for it. It's definitely going to be on my future travel list. All right, bringing us halfway through our list today, we have Pakistan. Now, Pakistan does not allow anyone to enter their country without an official invitation from a sponsor. You will be surprised to note, though, that it doesn't have to be someone you know necessarily. It could also be booked by a travel company with package offers. As long as your sponsor is able to write you a letter of invitation explaining their relationship to you and the purpose for your visit, you both provide your IDs, and you are able to submit a completed visa application, you should be all cleared to visit. Tourist visas with a 2-week processing time are about $160 US. All right, and next we have beautiful Russia. Russia's visa process is ranked as one of the more expensive visas to obtain. Even if you come from a powerful nation with a strong passport, that will not help making it any easier. Now, it's no surprise that if you expect access to their country, they will want to know all about you. That includes your travel history in the last 10 years. They want to know what you intend to do in their country, and they ask you to pre-book all of your accommodation, so there's not much room to be flexible. And don't think about applying online, because that is a no-go. Each visa application comes with taking fingerprints, photos, and a perfect application. One single mistake could cause a total mess and delay. So be sure to give yourself lots of time for your Russia visa to be processed and be ready to fork out the money. Coming from the US, visas run at about $160, and coming from Canada, they are approximately $112. Now, our next country is Nigeria. It is a beautiful country with lots to explore, so the work that you'll put into getting a visa will most likely be worth it. In order to obtain a tourist visa, you'll need a letter of invitation from your host, a confirmed hotel reservation, a valid return airline ticket, evidence of funds to cover your stay in Nigeria, and proof of legal residency from your home country. Costs can range anywhere from $160 to $180 US. Coming in at number 2, we have Bhutan. Bhutan is a country that comes with some unique challenges to get a visa. And it's not because it's overly rigorous, but because the people of Bhutan pride themselves on the quality of life in their country. Now, I had no idea, and maybe you don't either, but they are the first carbon negative country in the world, and they value their national happiness index above all else. So in order to visit Bhutan, you will have to book an all-inclusive package through a travel agent. These packages range from $200 to $300 US per day, and a visa on top of this is approximately $40. But you know what? That's not too bad considering it covers all of your expenses. Definitely seems worth it. And last on today's list, but certainly not least, we have Iran. Iran's visa process varies quite greatly depending on which country you're coming from. Iran has said they are trying to make their process more streamlined, but at this point, you should definitely check to make sure you know the requirements before flying. If you are from Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bolivia, Georgia, Malaysia, Syria, Turkey, or Venezuela, you are eligible for a free visa. Most travelers are eligible for a VOA, or visa on arrival. Though it's important to note that this list does exclude Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Colombia, India, Iraq, Jordan, Nepal, Pakistan, Somalia, and Sri Lanka. And any travelers who have visited Israel within the last 6 months will likely not be granted entry. On top of all of that, you will also need a visa code when you apply from a registered tour company. The Iran travel visa upon single entry is approximately $190 US.
At number 10, we have Singapore. Singapore is small, but the government has a firm implementation of the laws and policies. Any wrong move can cause a person to be fined. Like spitting in a public area, for instance, you can be fined for that. Also, if you smoke in public areas, you are most likely to get into some trouble with the law. Even wearing an inappropriate dress in public can also land a person in jail. However, Singapore's strict adherence to the rules has resulted in a world-class economy with living standards that are way higher than many other nations. In at the number 9 spot, we have Japan. People believe that for many years, the feudal system that was in place in Japan still has its influence on the structure and workings of the modern government. The hierarchy of authority can be found in almost any structure in the country, including in the home, of course, in the school system, office and workplaces, you name it, it's all there. So pretty much everybody respects the person who is superior to them. All of the companies in the country adhere to the strict law that all employees from the CEO down to the janitor are supposed to excel in their work. Number 8 leads us to China. In the midst of territorial disputes with its neighbors, China has projected a very positive image by being open to other nations. However, one must keep in mind that China is still a communist country. Any person or agency who gives rise to anti-government propaganda, well, they're silenced pretty much immediately. The youth of the country are also deterred from being fascinated and influenced by Western culture and Western thought. And the media also is under control. Access to the internet has several restrictions, and websites like Google and social media platforms like Facebook are censored and blocked. Nobody is allowed to talk about rebellion or change or reform or anything like that in China. From there, let's move on to number 7, Cuba. The birthplace of Cuban cigars and the late Fidel Castro. It's primarily seen as a world-class vacation destination. But behind its beaches and Latin music and all of that, Cuba remains a communist country, and those who speak against the government, well, they face serious consequences. The internet is regularly screened, and writers who post anti-government sentiments will almost certainly face jail time if they're arrested. Cubans know how to party, of course. It's a great spot for vacationing. However, playing certain types of music, reggaeton music, well, it can be prohibited. From there, let's look at Equatorial Guinea at number 6. In the country, people are discouraged from learning how to read and write, according to many reports. Now, the rate of tourism, though, in the country is also very low due to certain factors. President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Basogo, he's a man that runs the country and has been in power since 1979. TV and radio stations are under the control of the government as well. Also, foreigners who are allowed to enter Equatorial Guinea are closely monitored and prohibited from filming scenes and conditions that portray any type of poverty. Number 5 leads us to Saudi Arabia. This country, of course, is deeply rooted in its laws, and these laws are based on the religion and traditions of the country. Social laws can be very strict, especially for visitors who are not necessarily familiar with the rules of the land and the culture there. For example, you should refrain from holding hands and any sort of public displays of affection. Also, alcohol is banned, and during Ramadan, the month of fasting, you should not have any water or food visible in public during this time, or even visible in your car, or you could risk being fined. Media, including books, newspapers, magazines, television, and films, as well as online content, are also censored by Saudi Arabian government officials. The Saudi government closely monitors media and restricts it under official state law. Next, let's look at Eritrea. This country is located above the Horn of Africa and has been ruled by President Isaias Afwerki, who came into power in the year 1993. Now, the government has full control of the media and over the news, as well as control of who writes the news. No news can be broadcasted without approval from the president first, and the religion in the country is also controlled. Since 2004, Eritrea has been designated as a CPC, and what that means is that it's a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, Section 402B, for having engaged in or tolerated particular severe violations of religious freedom. Coming in at number 3, we have Syria. Syria's violence has risen over the years as clashes between government and rebel forces have intensified. The Syrian regime has resorted to a nationwide communications blackout to curb anti-government protests, and communications via mobile phones as well as landline phones as well as internet access are restricted, and foreign news correspondents are also restricted, and media is very closely monitored. Syrian journalists who oppose the government can actually be targeted. From there, we look at Iran at number 2. The government of the country is based on religion and Sharia laws. Actions and propaganda against the government are illegal in Iran. Logging into social media websites such as Facebook and various different Google platforms, YouTube and whatnot, it's something that you should do with caution. VPNs aren't allowed in Iran. However, it's known that everybody uses them to use Facebook and YouTube and other websites that are blocked in Iran. Even the government is said to know this, but hey, you still gotta be pretty cautious when you're using those platforms. Women are supposed to wear hijabs and cover in public, and Western music is prohibited to be played or performed in public. The country coming in at the number 1 spot is North Korea. The communist country of North Korea accepts tourists from all over the world except tourists from South Korea as well as the United States. I never knew this. Also, personal guides that are called minders, they are assigned to every tourist that enters the country. They accompany tourists from the day that they enter to the day that they leave. Literally, they make sure that tourists do not break any rules and regulations of the country. They literally accompany you every single where you go. The administration has complete control over everything, including TV, radio, as well as publication companies. News and television content is censored, and only the ruling elite have access to the internet, and their online activities are tightly monitored. Traveling is also limited in the country, and intimate relations between unmarried couples are not allowed in North Korea. Women in the country are not allowed to wear pants, and the communist regime of North Korea, well, it has reportedly outlawed all but 15 non-socialist haircuts, and they have instead issued an order for proper hairstyles. So only certain hairstyles can be had in that country.